In today's episode of Myth-Busting Monday, we're gonna see if we can start a cash out worth more than 44,000 points. We're also going to try to join the audience outside the map on Skyway Stadium. We're even going to test if we can get XP for weapons and gadgets without damaging enemies. What's up guys, Myth-Busting Monday is officially back with Season 2, Episode 5. This is the series where I take myths from you guys below and test them in the finals to either confirm or bust them. Be sure to comment your myths for a chance to make it into our next episode. Massive shout out to all of my channel members. This awesome content is only possible thanks to you guys. Now kick back, grab an booze, and enjoy the show. Our first myth is from Hawaii asking, can you glitch grenade a mesh shield that's clipping through a wall? The simple answer is yes. You can shut down an enemy shield even if it's clipping through a surface. This not only disables the shield but completely glitches the enemy and prevents them from using abilities. Something I learned while testing this is that glitch grenades and glitch canisters completely ignore and bypass walls and floors. This means you can glitch someone that you can't see who also doesn't even have line of sight to the glitch grenade. You can literally throw a glitch grenade on the floor and affect enemies 2 floors down or above you. I'm not gonna lie, this actually made me want to start using glitch grenades and canisters more often. I had no idea they had this ability. It's an incredibly cool mechanic. This myth is confirmed. Mira has our next myth. At the Skyway Stadium map, you can use the crane to rotate it directly out of the map and use the crane as a bridge to the other side. The first part of this is definitely true. You can rotate the crane to a point where it's outside the playable area. If you walk the bridge, you hit the invisible barrier along the outside of the map, preventing you from walking any further. I did find 2 ways you can bypass this barrier. The first is to throw a gateway at the perfect angle and dash into it. The other is to stand at the end of the crane, then have a teammate turn the crane outside the map. Unfortunately, with both of these strategies, you run into the rubber band mechanic we discovered a few episodes back in Myth-Busting Monday. The rubber band mechanic forces you back into the playable area if you stray too far outside the map or into unintended areas. So just bypassing the barrier isn't sufficient to roam freely outside the map, even using this crane strategy on Skyway Stadium. However, I was on a mission to at least touch the audience and see if they were a solid object or merely a 2D image. Before the rubber band mechanic activates, you have a few seconds to run outside the map. I ran as fast as I could and dashed into the crowd in hopes they would catch me. Unfortunately, the audience is just a 2D image, but at least I can say we reached them. Even though we couldn't walk around freely and had to strategize a bit, I'm calling this myth confirmed. You can use the crane as a bridge to the other side. Up next, Too Conscious says, if you dematerialize a wall, start stealing a cash out through it, and then your teammate rematerializes it, the stealing action isn't stopped. This was an easy and straightforward one to test. Once you rematerialize the wall and cut line of sight to the cash out, the stealing process is immediately cancelled. What's funny is when you normally lose line of sight to the cash out, you have a small window of like half a second before it cancels the steal. But when you rematerialize the wall or structure, the game immediately cancels the steal. Even if you have just a hair left on the steal, you will not be able to finish it. This myth is 100% busted. Up next, we have a nuclear myth from ManyBlock. Can you take a turret or APS mounted on a goo canister and throw it into a gateway? Before I could even throw a chair with turrets attached, something insane happened. The turrets stay shadow linked to the object I'm holding and do all sorts of crazy things. They hover around on their own but move dramatically when I move the original object around. What's insane about this is that everyone else in the lobby sees the turrets in different locations. So on my screen, when the turrets are above the ground shooting someone, the enemies don't always see the turrets and get shot from completely different locations. You can lift the turrets high in the air, move them through walls, and even hide them underneath the map. Things can get very complicated and tangled if you have the turrets go through a portal multiple times or hold the original object over the portal. If you throw the object or canister through the portal, it will break and all of the turrets will drop where they are, including those below the map. Glitched Glory commented a similar myth. If you put something on an object like a mine or C4 and hold the object up to a gateway, the C4 will teleport to the other gateway but be phantom linked to the object. Mines and other placeables have the same effect as the turrets. They go through and float in the sky. What's hilarious about this is that the mines stay active just like the turrets, so you can poke someone with the mines while moving them from across the map. This can be tricky though, since the mines don't always appear at the same location for everyone. This mechanic or bug is absolutely nuts, and I'm glad to confirm both of these myths. 7ZX says, can you throw a dome shield on an object and carry it? This would have been super cool, but no matter what I tried, I could not get a dome shield to stay on an object once I picked it up. I tried every table, chair, canister, and object I could find. Even if the object barely moves, the dome shield will force its way off and navigate to a stable surface. This myth is busted. Tony has our next myth. Damage that RPG, C4, and mines do to buildings count towards the experience to unlock skins at the end of the game. There's actually a lot of really cool information to unpack with this one. RPG, C4, and the grenade launchers all give you weapon XP just for damaging walls and surfaces. Even though this seems like an overpowered strategy to unlock skins, the XP you get for this is very low. Even if you damage buildings for 20 minutes straight, you will barely build your XP meter. When you damage the environment with these weapons, none of it will count towards your combat score in-game. Here's where things get weird. The explosive landmines do not give you XP for damaging the environment. However, they will add to your combat score on the in-game leaderboard, even if you hit no one with them. You can place landmines outside the map or just in an open field. As long as you blow them up, this immediately adds hundreds to your combat score. Here's where it gets even weirder. You know how I told you RPGs and C4s will not add to your combat score if you only damage the environment? For some reason I can't fathom in my mind, if you set off a landmine with an RPG or C4, the damage added to your combat score is multiplied. Again, I have no clue why this works, would love for someone to unpack this one for me in the comments. But even if you set off mines with the grenade launcher, RPG, or C4, you still will not get weapon XP for the landmines unless you actually hit enemies with them. The last weapon with weird XP gain is the Goo Gun. The Goo Gun gives you XP just for firing it. It doesn't matter if you hit the ground or even outside the map. Just like the previous weapons, you will not get significant XP for doing this unless you're hitting enemies with the goo and providing other support for your team. But this still felt pretty neat to learn. The original myth is confirmed. You can level up weapons and gadgets by dealing damage to buildings. Gabriel has a really funny myth for us. Is it possible to get a double kill with a single launch of a vault? This one was actually a little difficult to test at first with just a few people. I had to assemble the Mythbusters to get a definitive answer on this. I had everyone stand close together and I threw the cash box with the fastest throw possible. I combined dash with quick melee to throw the cash box at unreal speeds. It still was not possible to hit someone with the cash box and then hit a second player within a single throw. It would either go through the second person or bounce off them and deal no damage. The maximum targets you can hit with a throw is limited to 1. This myth is busted. Up next, we have a super interesting myth from Peck. You can drop the cash out station on a vault and have it go in. Up front, this sounds like a really fun myth to solve. On our first attempt of this, we thought the myth was busted and that you couldn't do this. We aligned the cash box and cash out perfectly, yet it still wouldn't go in. Thankfully, we ran a second test to verify this and it immediately became a head scratcher. On our second attempt, the cash box entered and began the cash out with no problems whatsoever. I wasn't sure what we possibly did differently, so we tried a third time, and of course it wouldn't work again even after multiple attempts. This kept going back and forth, and I'm still not quite sure what causes the cash out to sometimes begin while other times it doesn't. You can even get similar results by just using goo to push the cash box into the cash out station. Sometimes this will work with no issues and you can start the cash out using goo. Other times it won't enter no matter how close you try to align it. My theory is that it has something to do with which team opens the vault and which team touches the cash box last before it enters the cash out. I wasn't able to verify any of this as the results were all over the place and nothing seemed consistent. I would love to revisit this one in the future, but for now, we're calling this myth confirmed. You can drop the cash out station onto a cash box and have it go in, albeit just not consistently. Twiz comments, does being on fire set off gas? Also, does it light up any goo touching you? The simple answer to this is no. Even if someone throws a pyro grenade at you, you can't spread the fire to goo, the environment, or use it to put out gas. However, things get really cool if you have a riot shield. If you're holding a riot shield, fire affects you differently. If you're set on fire while holding the riot shield, you actually can use it to put out poison gas or spread it to goo. The only problem you might run into is getting the fire off yourself. I would call this myth confirmed, but because it requires the riot shield to be set on fire, I'm calling it busted. You can't normally put out gas while on fire or spread it. For our last myth today, we have another nuclear one posted by Pure Strafes. 44k is the highest points you can get from a single cash out. This myth we actually discovered by accident a couple weeks ago during my minigame tournament. When you're playing cash out or ranked tournament, if you never begin the first cash out, we learned that vaults 3 and 4 will spawn in. This allows you to have 4 cash boxes active simultaneously. Vaults 3 and 4 always spawn in 6 minutes after vaults 1 and 2 spawn in. If you insert all 4 into the same cash out, you get a cash out worth 50,000 points. But I actually discovered a method to increase this amount to over 60,000. At the beginning of the game, you need to rush the first cash box into the cash out. If you do this fast enough, the cash out can finish before the 6-minute mark and vault 3 will spawn in. Then you just have to insert vaults 2 and 3 into the cash out at the very last second, and then vaults 4 and 5 will spawn in. Vault 2 is worth 10,000 points. Vaults 3 and 4 are worth 15,000 points each. And Vault 5 is worth 22,000 points. If you insert them all into the same cash out, you have yourself a cash out worth 62,000 points. Hypothetically, if your team inserted all 4 vaults and got the 8,000 points for doing so, it would be worth 70,000 for a single cash out. We tried for hours to increase this number by inserting vaults 1 and 2 at the beginning of the game. We thought this would allow us to insert vaults 3, 4, 5, and 6 at the end, which would give us a grand total of 74,000 points. But unfortunately, there's some factor I'm not fully grasping with this. We tried starting cash boxes 1 and 2 together and in separate cash outs. It didn't matter what we did or how fast we went. If we inserted both of the first 2 cash boxes, we never got the extra vaults to spawn in 6 minutes later. The only conclusion I could possibly draw from this is the developers implemented this mechanic in case a team was protecting the cash boxes for the entire match and halting the game's progress. That, or it's just a bug that was never fixed. You guys will have to let me know what you think below. I'm convinced there's gotta be a way to get an even higher cash out number. Our original myth from Strafes is busted. 44,000 is not the highest amount of points you can get from a single cash out.